You said the world needs power, I won't disagree. There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free. You call nuclear the future, but it won't power itself. Nuclear relies on coal more than coal needs itself. You said crypto was coming and demand would explode, that AI would load what the grid couldn't hold. But SMRs stay delayed, no ground ever breaks, and the public pays out while the promise remakes. You said it's the hour, but the plan's still the same. The technology is analog from the Cold War days. There's no place for the waste, and yuccas refuse.
Always takes a minute, my apologies.
Vented dry cast containers become the only refuge.
There we go. I'm Dana. You can call in 709-589-4406.
You say you lead the charge with a federal hand. Would you vote Price Anderson or stand with the land? You call it advance,
Just loved
but
it.
the cycle's well known. Still chasing a fuel that should have stayed in the stone.
Such a great song, man. Wow. You'll find out at James Luce's site on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description momentarily. And there's over 330 anti-nuclear songs there. Filmmaker, musician, artist. And no harder working anti-nuclear music activist slash anti-nuclear slash, but the music is incredible. You're talking about over 330, which is more than the entire planet combined has produced of anti-nuclear. And I can tell you right now, it's not too shabby. So yes, that's the controversial poll for everybody tonight. Sometimes that happens. It's good for the goose, should be good for the gander, shouldn't it? I smurfed it up. Should China or Russia drop 30,000-pound bombs on Israeli secret nuclear sites? Some people might think it's a good idea. Why should Israel have nuclear but not... I mean, you know, Pakistan's got it, North Korea's got it, India got it. They're not using it. Why would Iran use it? Israel got it. If you use it, then it's all over for everybody, and so they're gone too. So what's the point? This question was put to this was a spokesperson for Israel.
Why should the world tolerate you having nuclear weapons and not, say, Iran?
First, again, we never admitted to have such a weapons, but the very comparison is, I must say, it's very insulting, and I tell you why. We suffered one Holocaust. We listened to our neighbors.
Is it because of the Holocaust that you should be allowed to have nuclear weapons?
You know what? This interview was finished now. Your attitude is so hostile, and your questions are so arrogant, I don't want to
Is it
speak
the
with you
case
anymore.
He asked a question. I thought Israelis were stoic. Do that again.
Why should the world tolerate you having nuclear weapons and not, say, Iran?
That's a legitimate question. What's wrong with that question? So he's going to bounce it back to the ancestors, who, by the way, 56 million people died to free you, so that you can be an arrogant prick on TV.
First, again, we never admitted to have such a weapons.
Yeah, but I mean, it's common knowledge you got it. You got DMOA. You're not part of the nuclear non-proliferation treaties. It's no big secret. But it's an incredible response from somebody.
But the very comparison is, I must say, it's very insulting, and I
It's very insulting, really.
tell you why. We suffered one Holocaust.
You didn't suffer jack shit. Our loved ones suffered a Holocaust bigger than yours. 56 million people. 56 million. Not 6, but 56. So I think we're more important than you. We lost more than you did. We sacrificed to free your punk asses that are carrying out a genocide. And you really think Iran hasn't suffered Holocaust in their legacy?
We listened to our neighbors.
Is it because
We listen to our neighbors. Listen in on their neighbors.
of the Holocaust that you should be allowed to have nuclear weapons?
You know,
I was like, what? You can't ask questions like that. That's anti-Semitic. And instead of being rational, no debates allowed. What a punk. This is Israeli soldiers, that's what you want to call them, serial killers. Just before they went and started wrecking Gaza, look at them. And he streamed it live to TikTok. That was your genocide or Holocaust call, right? They're committing a Holocaust, and there's no other way to describe it. The Israelis' history wasn't erased. Gaza's Palestinians there. They destroyed every university, every museum. They looted it too. But they also destroyed the artifacts. Israel didn't have that happen to them. It's a true Holocaust, what they're doing to Palestine. And to wrap themselves up in a flag and do it is just disgusting. It really, really is. Let's get back in business here. So, U.S. intel assessments suggest that they didn't destroy the nuclear sites. What does that mean? They got to go back in there? Anything from CNN is pretty dubious on top of that, right? So this is after the bomb drop. The discoloration you're seeing. Now last night we went through the before and after pictures. Just let me run backwards. I still got all that. I got every show I've done about Israel in the last couple of months still loaded. La 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 la. Justification. Let's sing a religious hymn. That's justification. Go in, carry out a genocide, Dana. Just what it looked like before and after. So the discoloration is 30-pound bombs kicking dirt everywhere and causing fractures in the earth and everything else. Pretty impressive. The Fordo facility, significant discoloration. So this is this is after, and that's before. La 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 la. Now go kill all the babies and all the women, and all the children. There's estimates now at 350,000 people dead. They can't be accounted for unless you say they're under the rubble. And if you look at what they've done to Gaza, man. Well, parts of Israel are starting to look like Gaza. The Geiger counter, I'm just having a few problems with that tonight because I was late paying attention to it. Just give me a second, maybe I can. I gotta leave it big enough so you can read it. Oh, there you go. That's better. All right, here we go. Still got to get that Geiger counter out of the way so I can read. The U.S. military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities last week and did not destroy the core components, and likely set it back by months instead of destroyed it. By 4 people briefed on it. And it's hard to say because of CNN, right? So they could be just doing this as justification to go back in. Could be true. Wouldn't surprise me if it's true. Wouldn't surprise me if they're just doing it because it's CNN, so it's very dubious. Findings are at anything from CNN is just you can't put any faith into it, right? They're clearly not. They're clearly the military-industrial complex owns them, right? You can check that out. Who owns CNN? You'll find out it's the military. One of the biggest weapons producers. Findings are at odds with President Donald Trump's repeated claims that the strikes completely, totally destroyed the enrichment facility. The Secretary of Defense said the same thing. Turns out, allegedly, that's not true. 2 people familiar said the stockpile of enriched uranium, 60%, was not destroyed. One of the people said the centrifuges are largely intact, and there's strong suggestions that they got 100 different sites with centrifuges still working away. So the assessment is that the U.S. set them back maybe a few months, tops. That's just a single person that was allegedly briefed. The White House acknowledged the existence of the assessment, but said they disagreed with it. 30,000-pound bombs does an awful lot of damage, man. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told CNN. The alleged assessment is flat out wrong, classified as top secret, but still leaked to CNN by low-level losers in the intelligence community. The leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump. Not very hard to do. You mean John Wayne, and discredit the brave fighter pilots. What do you got to be so brave about? They weren't worried about anybody catching them or shooting them down. Who internationally broke laws in order to go do what they done. Yeah, let's go bomb anybody we don't agree with. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 30,000. That's 420 pounds of military-grade explosives perfectly on their targets. Total destruction. Maybe so, maybe so. It's hard to say. You got no proof. There's a lot of evidence for both sides, so I don't know. I'm not down there. U.S. B-2 bombers dropped over a dozen of the bombs in 2 of the nuclear facilities. And they had a submarine or 2, I don't know, probably 2 by the sounds of it. The Fordo fuel enrichment plant, the NADTES enrichment complex, bombs did not fully eliminate the site's centrifuges and highly enriched uranium, according to the people. I don't think they were trying to blow up the highly enriched uranium. Why would you do that? Maybe they blew it up and this is the cover story. Who knows? According to the people familiar with the assessment. Where's my Geiger counter? There she goes. Let me just... One more adjustment to the tilt. Let's get a little tilt. I can fix it. I can tilt it right out, tilt it back in. I can do that with any of my screens. I can do that with me. I know I shouldn't, but let's have some fun with Dana time. Oh, God, I'm upside down. My head is hurting. I don't know what else I can do. I can flip myself. Ha-ha! Woohoo! Now you see me, now you don't. I can flip myself that way, too. I'm getting sick doing that, actually. My apologies. I can stretch myself. Just give me a second. Let me amuse myself. Sometimes that has to play out. Make myself skinny. And I can pop myself straight up, straight down, and straight across, of course. Bloop, bloop. There he was. Gone. Hello, everybody. Yep. Anyway, let's get back to business. My apologies. I do that sometimes. This was what they done to Gaza since October the 7th. To the Palestinians. They're not chasing Hamas. They're attacking the Palestinians. So they chased the Palestinians. He said, you got to move down here. And then he went, so what's it like for the jet fighters knowing no one's shooting back at them? Are they brave too? Are they brave and stoic, those fighter pilots? Nobody's shooting back at them? Must be some. Then they're home for supper, flying high with my head in the sky. And we want you to all to go left. And then he bombed there. You tell me this, they're not insane? Imagine doing that to Israelis. Just hang on. I screwed that up so bad, I gotta fix it now. La 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 la. There's my big head. It's hideous. I'm kidding. So yeah, they're just like having a great old time telling the Palestinians, you go over here, and then they bomb over there, jet fighters and drones and helicopters and 4,000 tanks. No one's shooting back at them. What a thrill, eh? Now they're all shitting their pants just because Iran kicks the shit out of them every time they do something. It's pretty strange watching the Israelis' response. Right, they're used to mocking, making fun of the victims in Palestine. They dress up like Palestinians. My baby's dead. And now they're like, my baby's dead. I never seen them do that before because it's never happened to them before. They got decades and decades of screaming, the Holocaust. Can't say nothing to us because there was a Holocaust. Yeah, but there's a bigger Holocaust to the people that try to rescue you, you fucking pieces of shit. Well, you know the story. You know how you know the song and dance by now, right? I'll play it for you. Hang on. The normal narrative that you got to put up with all the time with these people. They've never fought a real military. Now they're fighting a real military. They surrendered and had to get the Americans to come in and save their ass. Nothing but a pain in the ass to the whole planet. Can't have peace on the planet with Israel being pricks all the time. Everybody hates us. I wonder why.
If we are the chosen people, who are you to tell us what to do? Who are you? Who is the international community to tell Israel what to do? International law? Who? Wonderful thing. It doesn't apply on us. It applies on any other place on earth, not on Israel. Because we are the chosen people. Don't you understand it? The second very deep-rooted value is obviously the value of we, the victims, not only the biggest victims, but the only victims around. I know many occupations which were longer than Israeli occupation, than the Israeli occupation. Some were even more brutal, even though it's getting harder and harder to be more brutal than the Israeli occupation. I don't recall one occupation in which the occupier present himself as the victim. Not only the victim, the only victim. If to quote here the late Golda Meir, whom I quoted also last time, I know, but it is so unforgettable I have to use it again. She once said that we will never forgive the Arabs for forcing us to kill their children. We are the victims. We are forced to kill their children. Poor us. The second very deep-rooted value is obviously the value of we, the victims, not only the biggest victims, but the only victims around. There is a third very deep-rooted value, and this is the very deep belief, again, everyone will deny it, but if you scratch under the skin of almost every Israeli, you'll find it there. The Palestinians are not equal human beings like us. They are not like us. They don't love their children like us. They don't love life like us. They were born to kill. They are cruel. They are sadists. They have no values, no manners. Look how they kill us. This is very, very deep-rooted in Israeli society, and maybe that's the key issue. Because as long as this continues, nothing will move. As long as most of the Israelis don't perceive the Palestinians as equal human beings, we are so much better than them. We are so much developed than them. And we are so much human than them. As long as this is the case, all our dreams, and we have some dreams, and I'll get to them, all our dreams will never become true as long as this core issue will not change.
He nails it. Always the victim. It was 56 million people died. There's a bigger Holocaust than the 6 million they say died. Just saying. Not trying to be an arsehole, but I'm just saying. It's only them. Nobody else matters. Must be pretty weird to live in that world, man. My good man, my good women. Let me get back on page. International Atomic Energy Agency Romania is hosting a nuclear emergency exercise. This is the strangest story. 75 countries and 10 international organizations are taking part in the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is United Nations, which shouldn't exist, is the world's largest and most complex international nuclear emergency exercise. How could a corporation with the same authority as McDonald's have this kind of influence on countries worldwide? What kind of black market mafia? It's hilarious. Look what a Geiger counter pointed at a tree. Why don't they hold it in Fukushima Prefecture, where they got 30 million one-ton bags? And now they disappeared 16 million one-ton bags. Well, no, there's 14 million one-ton bags, Dan, and now it's 30 million. The ex-con, which is Rafael Grossi, the con X, it's bizarre, right? 2025 full-scale exercise is designed to test global readiness for a nuclear or radiological emergency. They're doing this because of Iran and Israel, right? But Fukushima's already happened. How come Fukushima doesn't get any love? Whatever happens, like if Israel hits the Bashir in Iran, and Iran hits the Dimona in Israel, it's still going to be nothing compared to Fukushima. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be terrible, horrifying for all the species and all the humans, for the future of humanity. There's going to be nothing compared to Fukushima. It's like Fukushima didn't even happen, right? When you read those stories. What Fukushima? Because like officially, that's reactor 3, reactor 4, they didn't get destroyed. They're completely, everything is normal. They got all the fuel that it pulled. The official story is. Oh, no, Mr. Dinah, no, we got it all. Everything hunky, big secret. This is media pretending they're on top. I'll just play a little second of it.
Prime standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4.
Well, that's reactor 4. You can't be on top of a building that doesn't exist. You can't be 19 stories, 65 meters up, 190 feet at the top of a building. It doesn't exist. Unless there's some new technology takes you back in time that I'm not aware of. It's called public relation firm. They last 36 hours, generally held every 5 years and based on simulated events. Why do you need to do a simulated event when you had Fukushima? When you have 36 reactor cores, the majority of at the top of the 4 reactors in 8 fuel pools disappear. There's 36 reactor cores gone. That's why we have an extinction event. That's why all the grey whales on their migratory route right now are emaciated. This is the end times for the whales. It's not just the grey whales. Oh boy, no. It's not just the whales. All the whales are emaciated. Why do you do a simulated one when you had a real deal? Beyond your wildest imaginations. And that their simulated one has nothing, is never going to be at the catastrophic amount that was lost here. This is an extinction event for the species and the insects and the birds. You should see the folder I got for the next die-off video. Hang on here, I'll show you something. Go to my playlist. I believe we got over 1,000 videos. And click on View Full Playlist. There's over 30 videos of the die-offs where I walk you through it. Every one of them, the whales and the birds are emaciated, no matter where you're to on the planet. Seals and sea lions. Is that a coincidence? If you really want to understand what Fukushima done, you start watching some of that stuff. Get yourself up to speed. Be a hero instead of a zero. These will include protective actions such as simulated evacuation, iodine distribution, simulated evacuation. Such dirty, disgusting people. Let me explain that to you. It's so dishonest to say the things they're saying. It's just crazy. So the International Atomic Energy Agency, 2023, talking about 30 million one-ton bags. The first thing they said, the International Atomic Energy Agency is not a regulator. It's not in a position to judge or approve Japan. So it's not in a position to judge or approve Iran. It's not in a position to judge or approve North Korea. It's not in a position to judge or approve you, or you, or you, or you. Do you get it? So then why are they in the equation? Because you're not holding them accountable, because you're not in the know. You don't understand the significance of it. If you've never been here before is what I mean by that. The whole story is crazy. Just bear with me, though. It's kind of important. I don't want to screw this up. It's not a game playing with these nuclear sites, nuclear reactors, anywhere on the planet, because the pollution covers the planet right away. Here we go. By the way, this is a 20-day model, top left-hand corner, and the other one is 21 days. And that's radioactive fallout of neptunium-239. It decays to plutonium-239 in 2.5 days. So it's more than enough to get around the planet many times. These communities to your left, the population's the next line. This line here is just gamma cesium only, gammas, 137 atoms per square meter underground radioactive fallout. Those communities were normally it'd be like 185, like the age of a turtle. That'd be an evacuation zone at a nuclear site. Now it's just they don't give a shit about you. So all of these communities were abandoned. Why didn't they do their radiological, scientific doohickey? Why didn't the 75 countries, 10 international organizations go here and do it? Why do a simulated one when you have a real one you can go practice in? Nobody would mind. All of these places have been abandoned. Not abandoned, but abandoned by all these 75 countries and the 10 international organizations. And the International Atomic Energy Agency abandoned all of these people and left them in a nuclear wasteland. Why would you give them 2 seconds of your time? Why should anybody give them? Why would you give the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is not a regulator, as I just showed you, they're not a regulatory agency, they're not in a position to judge or approve, not just Japan, but anybody else. So that includes Iran, Israel, or anybody else, right? They have no authority. Mali and Russia signed an agreement on peaceful use of nuclear energy. That's not peaceful. Like a nuclear reactor is okay until the first 14 months. And then you're going to open it up and it's going to release massive radiation. You're going to see an increase right away of infant mortality. That'll show up right away. But you also see autism and Down syndrome studies starting to show all over the place. Because you know now that the population just got poisoned. And then they're going to take the fuel, a chunk of the fuel, maybe 1/3 of the fuel, and put it in a fuel pool at the top of the buildings, typically. And there's no containment anymore, so it's hemorrhaging radiation, invisible snowstorm, all day into the environment. We're talking about catastrophic plumes. And then every 14 months, you're going to put more fuel in the pool. So in 14 months, you're going to have twice the amount hemorrhaging from that pool. Within 10 years, you're going to have a catastrophic amount hemorrhaging from the pool. In 20 years, you're going to have an unimaginable amount of radioactive fallout. These are perpetual disease factories. And almost all nuclear power plants, except for a few, are surrounded by farms. This industry is so evil. It's the biggest threat to humanity and the 8 million species. It's just nuclear fuel pools, splitting atoms, because they never go away and they bioaccumulate in every species. There's no species on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. And so there's endless diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries that'll manifest from the ingestion or just proximity to this hideous stuff. Cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second. And after Fukushima, we had 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels of cesium-137, according to the French government study, spike in North America, Canada, United States. So it could be 20, 30 million per cubic meter of air. So the radioactive fallout on the ground is catastrophic. And that's forever. when it comes to me and you. It'll be here hundreds of years after we're gone. You can't just have cesium-137. Mali and Russia signs an agreement on peaceful. It's not peaceful because you poison everybody in the country now forever. And what's even more frightening was they're also going to use it for medicine. There's no nuclear medicine. Trust me, there is none. How can nuclear? If you look at studies on radiation therapy, you'll probably never even drive past a hospital again. There's another Holocaust right there. In fact, it's way worse than whatever happened to Israel. Is what they're doing with the so-called radiation therapy. Brutal destruction of everybody. It's only 2% of the people will live 5 years. I apologize here. Anybody had glasses knows. I was really happy because last night I made it right through the show without touching my glasses a single time. Not quite the case tonight. It's okay if it's in certain spots, right? But if it's in other spots, you start getting like cross-eyed and everything. Nuclear power stocks rise because New York says they're going to build a reactor somewhere in the next 15 years, was it? It'll take them 15 years. Why would they build a reactor when they're still cleaning up after the ones they had behind? And look at what Indian Point done to the fish stocks in the New Jersey plant. It wiped out the fish stocks. The radioactive fallout. Petrol, your fuel pools, see? It's insane how much is released every day from a fuel pool. There's 1,000 of them worldwide. There's nobody or no species on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. That means everybody gets sick from it. Heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. Hang on here. Don't buy stocks. Stocks went up, and they're 15 years away from a reactor, and the stocks are rising. Honey, we should buy some stocks. Look at it. New York is going to build a reactor, honey. It's a good place to put our money and grow some profits. Like, what are you talking about? It's going to be 50. If they start right now, it'll be 15, 17 years. They'll have it up and running. You can expect to get some money back on your stocks about 20 years, 25 years. Not much, but you get something back. You might lose a little bit, who knows, but it's nuclear, so how can you even trust them for 2 seconds? And any of the companies, right? NuScale, Camco, Oklo, none of these have a product, by the way. None of them have a nuclear reactor. Why would NuScale go up? They're small modular reactors that they've never built. They don't have an application into a full application into the regulatory agencies. They don't have land. They don't have an experimental reactors. They got so many hurdles, so many cliffs to climb. You know, if everything goes their way, 10 or 15 years, they might start building one. Why would you invest in companies that don't have a product? What are you thinking? It's a knee-jerk reaction because the industry's like, buy, buy, buy. And this was the disgusting Globe and Mail, right? Just despicable people. They're Canadian. They're despicable. They're in Vancouver. They're just disgusting parasites. They're revolting parasites, the Globe and Mail. Shunned in recent years. You got the same gigawatts as you had in the 90s worldwide. Not recent years, it's shunned post 3 Mile Island. 3 Mile Island, they made a concession. They'll put sirens at the nuclear power plants so people can run away. Guess what? If you have a nuclear meltdown, it melts right to the frigging, burns right to the ground, you still won't use the sirens. That's a fact, no matter where it's from. Meta and Amazon and Microsoft are interested in this technology. So you should buy stocks, right? Are you insane? So like the stock market should be charging these people with a Ponzi scheme, trying to talk people into buying a product where there's no way you're going to get money back until about 15, 20, 25 years. Why would you push that stock, see? Because the nuclear industry, if you don't support the nuclear industry, same thing as if you don't support the Jews, right? You're a bad person. You just got to do it to get along, Dana. Well, I'm not like that. The EU needs $280 billion for nuclear energy. That's just to start. On a good, 90% of the money goes to administration on top of that. Why would you invest in a corporation like that when there's so many other better, safer investments to make? And that's just to start. That's the scariest statement imaginable. Some EU countries are considering small modular reactors. The Canadian small modular reactor is 50 feet taller than Fukushima reactors, which are 19-story buildings. So 24-story buildings. Half of it is going to be underground. So imagine 12 stories underground, and there's 12 stories above the ground, and you're going to say, ha ha, small modular reactor. That's how kooky this industry actually is. And they're getting away with it. There's no one going to challenge them. There's no one going to say, well, that's a little bit far-fetched. They're going to say, wow, look, a small modular reactor. You way to go, nuclear. You bad motherfuckers. EU countries are considering something that doesn't exist. How about geothermal? That actually exists. No. Small modular reactor or fusion or nothing. We'll just wait for the small modular reactor and the fusion, Dana. Yeah, but geothermal actually exists. Yeah, the moon is there. We went there once. We don't want to go back there no more. Next stop, Mars. The people that are at the top of the so-called food chain out there for information and everything are insane idiots who got the job because they're willing to sell you out on the drop of a hat. Oh, that's right. They're also pursuing nuclear fusion. Oh, they got to show farmland right alongside the nuclear plant. Heaven forbid the picture doesn't have farmland in it. Small modular reactors and nuclear fusion. No other energy can exist with those two because you won't share the grid, right? So it can only be small modular reactors or big or fusion. It can't be anything else because they designed the grid so the grid doesn't work for renewables for most places, right? Oh, I got to build no grid, so why bother? We got grid there. It'll work with nuclear. That's all that matters. For energy independence and decarbonization. Well, like, without carbon, you can't have plants, you can't have farms, you can't have trees, you can't have insects or humans or puppies. And with radioactive foliage, you can't have plants, you can't have trees, you can't have puppies. Nothing says fucking batshit crazy quite like nuclear, does it? It's a fascinating industry, and there's like a million companies dependent upon it. Some of them are just vicious, blood-sucking parasites. Like the public relation firms, they're just disgusting. There's 1,000 of them just to denigrate any dissenting voices. That's why you don't see... There's never been an anti-nuclear show. That's what we've been doing for over a decade. Me, myself, and I, and those who support me. That's only the investment. So you get an education, even though it's a bit sarcastic sometimes. Sorry, that's the comes with the industry. If you're not vicious, then you're not part of the nuclear industry. Good or bad. That's only the investment needed for the convention that they'll make you vicious. I used to be a decent guy. I used to be reasonable. I used to be pretty soft-spoken. And I got hung up in this nuclear industry, and it's such a vicious, hateful, disgusting, despicable people. They really are. They're just very unlikable. No matter what it was, even if it was a barbecue, and you're not going to gravitate to these people for a conversation. Once you listen to them, you're like, holy crap. There's some weirdos over there, boy. That's the only investment needed for conventional large scale, for the large nuclear reactors, the old-fashioned disease factories. 270 billion, 280 billion. Don't include investments for small modular reactors, advanced modular reactors, or microreactors, or nuclear fusion. Why would you talk about all of that when you have geothermal everywhere on the planet? Why would you even bother? Geothermal, you can get much hotter than a nuclear reactor. Anything a nuclear can do, geothermal can do it right away and do it a lot cheaper. And you don't need a bunch of scumbags from the nuclear industry to build it and work it and engineer it. You don't have to poison everybody for 1 million years. I know that sounds crazy idea, but 16 viewers. Wow. Killing it again tonight, everybody. Don't talk about nuclear. It won't get censored, Dan. It's as simple as that. Should Russia or China drop 30,000-pound bombs on Israel's secret nuclear sites? That'd be so awesome, eh? You can warn them to get out. Give them like a 20-minute warning. Everybody can run away. Blow her up. Fuck it. Good for the goose, good for the gander. I'm surprised Iran hasn't blasted the living shit out of it. Not like they don't know where it's to. But they're just having fun using their old drones right now and their old missiles. I guess they'll get around to it soon enough. You know it's going to happen at some point. Israel's going to attack the Bashir nuclear plant. Iran's going to go flatten the Dimona nuclear plant. These people are crazy, though, aren't they? The EU is projected to grow from 98 gigawatts this year to 109 gigawatts by 2050. So 11 gigawatts is going to cost $277 billion? Really? I guess the British Sizewell is going to cost 57 billion or something, right? It was originally supposed to be 4 billion. Should have known better. So 11 lousy gigawatts. See how many gigawatts you can get? I've done the numbers actually. You get 70 gigawatts of geothermal for the same money. That sounds stupid, I know. Right? Why do something that makes sense, Dana? Are you crazy? Yeah, conspiracy theories. % of electricity in the EU is 2040 will be produced by low carbon primary renewables, complemented by dirty nuclear. Nuclear is the dirtiest technology on the planet. So if your gas, oil, and coal plants break down, do you got to ban the food in half your country for a decade? 55 countries banned the food in Japan, and 14 prefectures, which are the big prefectures, half the country. The rest of it should be banned too. There was no reason to remove the restrictions. Radiation's never going to go away. You know, they were just replaced by the pro-nuclear community. And then those countries slowly, there's still 20 countries with restrictions. It's crazy, right? If your coal plant breaks down, do you got to do something like that? No. If your gas plant breaks down, do you got to do that? No. If your oil plant breaks down, do you got to do that? And not only that, you left the people there. You're just disgusting. You're disgusting. Cleaner energy systems. Nuclear is the dirtiest, most resource-intensive industry in human history. Latest examples include Denmark and Italy, which are looking at small modular reactors, buddy. There is none, though. How are you going to look at something that doesn't exist? How does that actually work? Anybody know? They're believed to be simpler and cheaper to build and install. How would you know that when you don't have one? Just hang on one second. I got to fix my light. Always something. We're going to fucking break. Hang on. Oh, there you go. That's a bit better. I'm fucking blind. Well, I got the... I probably shouldn't do it. I got these small lights. These are special lights. They're $150 each. They're color corrected. And then I got the big LEDs with like 600 LEDs in each one. There's a dozen of them, so you're always like, don't look up. Don't, whatever you do, don't look up. That one right above me. And I got 6 of the small ones, but they're so powerful. I only keep them on 1 or 2, but they'll go all the way. You can go up 10 different settings. And so when I'm trying to get it down to the 1 or 2 setting, it'll like a little blind you if you accidentally look at it. Guess what I done? It's believed to be simpler and cheaper to build and install because of their smaller size, Dana. They're also expected to be more affordable, really. Is that why the small modular reactors like UltraSafe went out of business? Is that why NuScale's reactors, all the investors ran away because the prices kept increasing by $1 billion every few months? Yeah, it's probably going to cost another $1 billion for each reactor. And the production, if they had built the NuScale's original design, which is what they told the investors who lost are suing, right, as a class action suit, they would have paid $20-something billion for less than half a large nuclear power plant. Yeah, but it's small, Dana. See, that's what matters. No, dummy. Geothermal is the one that is your solution. Why would you look at anything else? How come you haven't got all the kinks out of geothermal? After all this time, how come you can't drill down the extra 2 kilometers to get to the super hot temperatures? Because it's bye-bye nuclear, gas, oil, and coal the minute you does it. And it's not that hard to do, on top of that. If you took just a fraction of a percent of the budget that's given to the nuclear industry in a single year and put it to figure out how to drill to the final couple of kilometers, 10, 12 kilometers, right? Super hot temperatures, hotter than gas, oil, and coal or nuclear. Even combined, gas is still hotter. It's a perfect solution. The real-world costs and timelines have yet to be fully proven. Not to be fully proven, but yet to be proven in any capacity whatsoever. You don't have one. The Canadians are going to build one. It's 240 feet tall. It's a 24-story building. It's got nothing to do with the definition of a small modular reactor on top of that. But that's what they're calling it. That's the Canadian small modular reactor. It's massive. It's a massive small modular reactor. These are professional bullshitters, right? You know, last year was 660 gigawatts. In 2024, in 12 months, we had 660 gigawatts, which powers 660 million homes, of just solar power come online worldwide. The total capacity of gas, oil, and coal or nuclear is around 360 gigawatts. Yet 660 came online of renewables, of just solar. There's a couple of companies out there got a great idea for drilling the last, Quatsi Electric is one of them, for drilling the last couple of kilometers. There's a couple of really good designs that is going to coming into fruition soon. So they need to flood the market with the reactors. Imagine building, this is what they want to do. They want to build a small modular reactor every 5 miles across your countries. Canada, United States, for instance. So you want 1,000, right? So which is one every 5 miles. So that you can charge up your cars and your transport trucks and your lorries and everything else. This is idiotic. Like, you don't have a product. This is talking about the Jetson fantasy that everybody still believes in for some reason. And after 80 years later, still nowhere in sight. The required investment in small modular reactors will be in addition to the $277 billion the lunatic, the unelected EU estimates is necessary for large-scale conventional reactors. So let's bump it up to $500 billion. You got any idea how much money they like to steal, or how much precious resource they needs? Europe is not also looking to support nuclear fusion. So you're going to support nuclear fusion, you're going to support small modular reactors, and you have been for over 50 years, which don't exist. They're working on technologies from the early 1900s, 1904 or something. And everybody has geothermal right under their feet, enough to power the planet 1,000,000 times over. It's right under your feet. And you already have technology that can drill you 3/4 the way down. You just got to drill the extra couple of kilometers and you'll be in the super hot temperatures up to 1,000 degrees, no problem at all. Which is hotter than gas, oil, coal, or nuclear. And so anything they can do, geothermal can do it cheaper, better, quicker, and more sustainable without poisoning every species for billions of years. I think that's a win. That sounds like a win to me. I'm fucking weird like that sometimes. German-based startup Proxima Fusion, in a move forward for the nuclear fusion experiment, raised another $150 million. The largest private fusion investment in Europe to date. The terrorist, Bill Gates' company, Terra, whatever the hell that is, I can't remember, for small modular reactors raised $2.5 billion or something, was it? We did the numbers like a week ago. There's 100 of these companies, 100 small modular reactor, 100 fusion companies. I can't keep everything straight, okay? Canadian Nuclear Learning Centre to advance education, support workforce and development. Chalk River National Laboratory, Canadian Nuclear Laboratory, also known as Chalk River National Laboratory, is where we had the first 2 meltdowns on the planet too. Right on the major river that goes all the way to the Atlantic, all the way to the Gulf, St. Lawrence Gulf. And the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, which is the government, and the Canadian Nuclear Crown Corporation, which is also the government, signed a memorandum of understanding with the University Network of Excellence in Nuclear Engineering to pursue the development of the Canadian Nuclear Learning Centre. Chalk River National Laboratory has always played a critical role in developing highly qualified people for the Canadian. Calling these people highly qualified is absurd. Most of these can't even tie their own shoes. Dr. Stevens, Chalk River National Laboratory's Vice President of Science Technology, said in a statement, "Ha, we fooled him again." Mitsotakis opened to nuclear energy, Athens. Yeah, why not? We want small modular reactor now. That don't exist. Europe's Nuclear Energy Club marking a dramatic shift for the nation with no nuclear power history. Yeah, we'll take 2, please. Can we get a large pot with that? A dramatic shift for a nation with no nuclear power history. No, that's just the way the nuclear industry is out there courting anybody that they think, well, we haven't poisoned everybody over here yet. Let's get a reactor over there. What about over in that country? We haven't poisoned everybody there with radiation yet. Let's get a reactor over there. That'll fill in the gaps. Declared that Greece should be prepared to join the Nuclear Alliance. Yeah. That's the worst news you can get. I see no way for the world to get to carbon neutrality without nuclear. Well, nobody fucking asked you. So shut your pie hole, you piece of shit. It's called geothermal. That's how you get to carbon neutrality. And you should go down and visit Reactor 3 at Fukushima and get your picture, get a selfie. Do the world a favor. The announcement represents Greece's first serious consideration of a nuclear power. That means they've got to buy stock in everybody, right? They're looking at us, so we better buy stocks, right? That's what they've been doing now since Fukushima. Like, all the media will come out, they looked at it, you should buy them stocks. You got to buy them right now. They're insane, and people are being tricked and manipulated and deceived into buying the stocks. And 2 weeks later, the bottom falls out, and they lose 1/3 of their investment, or worse. When it should never have been invested, right? They should stock. Whoever sold them or tricked them into buying the stock, they should be sued. Right? Because it's a Ponzi scheme to buy stocks in a company without a product. That's a Ponzi scheme. It's the very definition of a Ponzi scheme. For everybody but the nuclear industry, that's considered a Ponzi scheme. As European nations increasingly view atomic energy as essential for achieving the carbon neutrality. Right, the carbon fable is based on a public relation campaign by BP Oil / Carbon Footprint and Net Zero, which is a paper published by, I can't remember his name, Miles O'Brien. Hang on, I'll find it, because if it gets it wrong, then I'll be tormented by the the trolls. Always something with these guys, eh? Isotopes, reactors, headlines, fatal dose, father of global warming, that's it. Number one was Miles O'Brien. Miles Allen, I've never called him O'Brien. How come I couldn't remember that name? Lord knows I say it enough. What was the other scumbag? Oh, yeah, that's right, BP Oil. Carbon Footprint. A brief and frustrating history of the carbon footprint. That's such an interesting story. The carbon footprint. The idea of a personal carbon footprint was popularized by a large advertising campaign of the fossil fuel company BP Oil. And so the United Nations scooped up that study, Miles Allen's study, James. Yeah, I'm definitely getting Alzheimer's. It's finally kicking in. James Hansen, right, which was the official kickoff for that. That was climate change, was it? Global warming, climate change. And then hockey stick guy, Warner Brock or something, was it? I can't remember. Brock Warner something. I'll get it. Here we go. Wallace Brocker. That's what I said, wasn't it? So you had the United Nations scooped up Miles Allen's paper, which is the physicist behind Net Zero. There was James Edward Hansen, is the father of global or climate change. Bear with me. He gave a single 15-minute speech to the American Senate. Nobody's allowed to have a conversation about it. Everybody has to listen to him. Nobody else is allowed to have a input. Horrible person. Yeah, of the global climate change. His 15-minute bullshit, which was challenged academically. Wallace Brocker, which is the father of global warming, and the perpetual degenerate BP oil. Those 4 studies have been used to bludgeon humanity, and will be forever now, right? So whenever you talk about nuclear, you're talking about those 4 papers. Oh, and the Paris Agreement, which is what those papers have been scooped up and is by the military-industrial complex, United Nations, which is what... bear with me. Where did I put that to? Okay, I remember. Backup extra. Ha! I'm right for a change. So, what he's in the Council of Government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. And who he's talking about is the League of Nations, United Nations. This was / the New World Order, right? According to George Bush Sr., George W. Bush, is it? I got that clip there. And that's it. I gotta check the volume. I think that one's a little bit loud, that volume. So I'll restart it if I'm wrong. I'm going to tone it back.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
So he's calling United Nations the New World Order. Well, what do you say about that? So did Eisenhower. Eisenhower. / United Nations, right? European Investment Bank opened nuclear project funding last year. The 14 biggest financial institutions on the planet are currently randomly buying stocks in small modular reactor fusion companies and hanging on to them for a couple of weeks. So you got 14 of the biggest financial institutions on the planet buying millions of stocks in the same companies. So to the investor, they're like, holy shit, look at that stock go up. They're going to buy into it. And then the 14 financial institutions will sell their stocks and steal 1/3 of those investors' money. And then the kickback goes to the company, which keeps it alive without too much of a burden of paperwork on taxpayers. Right? It's an incredible scheme, Ponzi scheme they're doing. And they just rinse and repeat over and over and over since Conference of Parties 28, which was 2023. Last year was Conference of Parties 29. Constipation Parties 29. European Investment Bank opened nuclear project funding last year on top of that. And the World Bank recently, that was just a few weeks ago, lifted its 1959 nuclear financing ban. So everybody has to get on the knee and kiss the ring of the nuclear industry. And the industry can still not produce anything. That's what cracks me up the most. Thank goodness. So they know they're going out of business, so to speak, and they're sabotaging renewables and, in particular, the geothermal. They just stomp that into the ground. They create rules so you can't even talk about it, and you have to fight through legislation to get them redacted. Or rescinded, rather. And the World Bank recently lifted its 1959 financial Emphasis particularly interested in small modular reactor, but why? Right? This is why you got an interest in something that doesn't exist. Why are you putting your country's in jeopardy for energy by looking at something that doesn't exist and excluding the stuff that does? And that is way more applicable. Why would you do that? Because that's what the industry does. It just destroys everything good. Whether it's in... offers greater flexibility and safety features. But it doesn't. It doesn't exist. You can't quantify the assertion with something that doesn't exist. The Prime Minister suggested nuclear technology could benefit Greece's crucial shipping sector. Oh, really? We're going to have Chernobyls that they're floating around in the ocean everywhere. That's how do you think that's going to play out? like, it's already been used and it's already proved to be a nightmare to the planet. The radiation is here forever. It never goes away. It kills everything with replicating cells. Why would you release that into your environment? What's the goal there? It's the opposite of being environmentally sound. It's the worst because there's nothing, no humans, no species, nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger that can defend against the fallout. You can't have nuclear without perpetual fallout from the fuel pools. Once you take the reactor out of the core, it's still splitting atoms for millions of homes and businesses for 1 million years, except now it's in a fuel pool with no containment. What do you think is going on? All that stuff is released all day long. It's stupid. And it's evil. Why are we doing this? Currently, Greece generates 50% of electricity from renewables. Yeah, so why would you look at anything else? Why not geothermal, stupid? Because if you don't come out... because all of these stories are meant to artificially inflate, at some point, stocks. Uranium, whether it's uranium stocks or small modular reactor fusion companies. They're probably never intending to do it. They just got to come out and say it, and that the media will take that and seize up on it and hoodwink the investors into investing into an industry that has no tangible assets. This is also known as a Ponzi scheme. But you're holding up the planet from having a future and countries from coming up without wasting their money. So you're wasting your time, your energy, your money on a product that doesn't exist and is highly unlikely to exist. After 50 years, if you haven't nailed it yet, well, there's something else going on, isn't it? Spending on nuclear weapons. What are you going to do with a nuclear weapon? You can't use it. Surge. The nuclear industry is your curse. It's a curse on humanity. Gorbachev and Ronald something. The world is at one of the most dangerous points in recent memory. Unresolved war in Ukraine, escalations in the Middle East, continuous civil war in Sudan, which is Boko Haram, right? Created by Taliban, which turned into ISIS, which originally started at the Mujahideen, and there's 10,000 Mujahideen, and there was 10,000 Taliban, and there's 10,000 this, 10,000 that, and we destroy countries to get those 10,000. Never seems to do it. As long as there's a couple of hundred, they'll turn into ISIS, then they'll turn into the Mujahideen, or the Boko Haram. Millions dead, millions missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for, millions of orphans to get to 10,000 bad guys. That's the legacy for the last 100 years, by the way. Certainly everything to do with the Middle East. 10,000 Hamas, 10,000 this, 10,000 that. Let's go kill everybody in the country. They got 10,000. That's the magic number. India and Pakistan want to nuke each other there a month ago. Near collapse of the global nuclear arms control regime. What control? What are you talking about? Global spending on nuclear weapons topped $100 billion in 2024. Just nuclear weapons. When you look at the whole nuclear industry, it's well over $1 trillion a year wasted on something you can't You can't, like the submarines, the airplanes, the fuel for all those airplanes is crazy. Every 24 hours is crazy numbers for each plane. The profit that flows from developing, building, and they need to kill everything on the planet so they got enough fuel to keep the military running for another few decades is probably what's really going on. The profits that flow from developing, building, and maintaining them. Well, they need tritium every 11 years for starters. That's a huge amount of money per gram. We're talking like $30,000 per gram. You got 5,000 plus nuclear weapons. You need awful lot of tritium. The ICANN report identified 26 companies that split $20 billion in contracts in 2024, with $463 billion in outstanding contracts from deals made in the past years. So still another $463 billion, and they need to keep that momentum going. So, like, once the American military base showed up in Australia 20 years ago or something, well, the first thing you seen was brothels show up within a couple of miles. And the next thing you seen was children were missing all across Australia, little girls in particular, that happened to show up in brothels as drug addicts. Right alongside American military bases. And then the 7 biggest weapons producers established a footing in Australia. And so, like, well, we're going to get at least 10 nuclear reactors, because we got the 7 biggest weapons producer in our country. They need business. Once the nuclear industry, corruption is rampant after that. Once it shows up in your country, the corruption is insane. There's no politician you can't buy off. Ron Paul, maybe. Czechs signs a record nuclear deal, but questions remain. This was South Korea. France, there was a controversy over France. It's the EDF, which is Israeli military, right? The EDF, which is the French government corporation, used to be Areva, was it? They had all these obligations for fuel, used spent fuel, and they just dissolved themselves, kept the same telephone numbers, the same office buildings, the same employees, and switched their names and got rid of their obligations a few years ago. That's typical nuclear industry, by the way. Nuclear-powered cargo ships. Just great. Cleaner, faster transport. There's nothing clean about nuclear at all. Nuclear is I can take you down that road of that whole process. It's absurd. To get it to the point of fuel is absurd toxicity released into the environment. Once you take it out of the reactor, the emissions are catastrophic to insidious amounts of, well, all the species planet-wide. Shipping accounts for more planet-warming greenhouse gas emissions than Japan. Well, actually, they say 3% emissions globally, but 15 of the 15 biggest ships create more pollution than all the cars in the world. There's over 90,000 of them on the ocean at any given time. They're burning what they call bunker fuel, which is supposed to be stored because it's the sludge. It's very inefficient on top of that. And so the incredible pollution, instead of storing it, they're putting it in big container ships and so-called burning it. It burns like coal because it's so thick. But it's very ineffectual for the burning process. So it releases huge particles into the environment, as well understood. Trump claims Iran has a few weeks away from nuclear weapons. It was only a couple of days later, or the next day, that he attacked, right? It was the next day, wasn't it? It simply wasn't true. Oh, there's a few weeks away. Just got off the phone with Benjamin Maitai. Is that how you pronounce his real name? Maitai or something? We played that clip last night and the nights before when he was 28 years old. He had a different name. Israeli president calls on the world to help destroy Iran's nuclear sites. Come on, everybody! Clap your hands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. No more. Not just a victim, but the only victim. The always victim. The Israelis. Always the victim. Oh, poor Israelis. They're always the victim.
Mr. Natai is a...
Natai, I'm sorry. N-I-T-A-Y. That was his name when he was 28 years old. Today's name is Netanyahu, right? Which has got nothing to do with Natai. He changed it so he could sound more Israeli, see? He's not even from there. China builds portable neutron gun powered by hydrogen-lithium nuclear reaction. Now, this is a reactor in your hand now. Great. It brings the word dirty bomb to a whole different level, doesn't it? They can find cracks in airplane wings and detect explosives. Ha ha! Particle gun uses electromagnetic technique to produce atomic flashlight. They can find cracks in airplane wings and detect explosives. I swear. This powerful but portable particle gun harnesses a novel electromagnetic technique to smash hydrogen protons and lithium atoms to achieve a nuclear fusion with unprecedented efficiency, producing a nail-sized beam with 10 billion fast neutrons generated per section. Just bad news for every species on this planet. Each neutron packs 3 million electron volts of energy. Wow. Similar to particles emitted during an atomic bomb explosion. That's the whole different meaning to the word dirty bomb. Neutrons are tiny particles inside the atom with no electrical charge. Their neutrality lets them slip through material like atomic flashlights and kill deep tumors. The first thing comes out of their pie holes, every isotope they discover is, maybe you can stop cancer. No, that one didn't work. No, that one didn't work. 1,000 later, well, that one didn't work either. Sorry, buddy. What's that you say? You're dying? Of course you are. That's what nuclear does. Nuclear doesn't cure cancer. Nuclear cures or kills you. That's what nuclear therapy does. You don't want me to do a presentation on it, trust me. I got a folder there, nuclear with radiation therapy. That's the last thing. That's the last thing anybody's going to ever do to me or my loved ones if I got something to do with it. Neutron can also be used as a weapon, such as the clean neutron bomb developed during the Cold War to kill people but spare the buildings. Just great. That's highly dubious, by the way. The new system drive is no larger than a fire extinguisher, is powered by a mere 10 watts of DC current. Highly portable, eh? Hasn't appeared in any published records so far. The researcher said the device worked continuously for half an hour in the test. Well, if it works for half an hour, then it's hell on earth, isn't it? And kept in the dark. A group sues the feds, the United States American federal government, for withholding Hanford nuclear site info. It's the Columbia River you're looking at. The most polluted river on the planet. There's a spot on that river, downriver from Hanford. It's in the Hanford Reservation area, which is 580 square miles. That was, on the shoreline, was at 70 sieverts per hour. So if you're on a fishing boat just drifting along the river, because it's a big river, it goes all the way to the Pacific, and it feeds around 25,000 farms, on the way to the Atlantic, or the Pacific. Millions of people use it for drinking water. And they dumped in online trenches, 41 miles of online trenches, 450 billion gallons of radioactive sludge from the Manhattan Project. This is the sludge that's splitting atoms still today, and will for a million years. That's enough to build a 6-foot wide aquarium, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet, more than once. From just that one time, right? What has my act done in former Soviet Union? What has India and Pakistan and Israel and everybody else done, I wonder? It's going to take at least another $1 trillion to come close to cleaning up what's left at the site. Columbia River Keepers environmental group focused on the Columbian River. Suing the Department of Energy for not releasing Hanford nuclear site documents requested a year ago. Shown is the Columbian River flowing past the H reactor, the Hill reactor. They produce plutonium for weapons. They contaminated the entire planet. They dumped, they got 177 large tanks, right? That they spent just billions and billions and tens of billions of dollars trying to come up with a solution for those 177 tanks. They dumped 1.4 million of the same tanks into unlined trenches on the site. Everything runs straight down into the Columbia River. Every time you have rains and snow, that's what happens eventually. You're washing an absurd amount into the Columbia River. I got one of my eyes agitated. Always something with me peepers in it. Not the glasses, me rubbing my eyes. Ah, well. Let's keep going here. The Oregon-based environmental group focused on a clean and healthy Columbian River has filed a lawsuit in federal court asking a judge to order the Department of Energy to search for the documents and promptly void any that are public records. The Department of Energy is yet to even make a final determination about whether it will comply with the Freedom of Information, the FOIA, request submitted in June 2024, according to the lawsuit. They're seeking records about Department of Energy proposal to lease 19,000 acres, what's allegedly unused land, at the 580 square mile Hanford site for clean energy development. We've covered all of these stories. The organization says the proposal includes potential for nuclear energy infrastructure. Because all it takes is one politician to label it clean energy, and then everybody can get sick and friggin' die. Efforts to restore the land and the water, you can't do it at a nuclear event like this place, are at a tumultuous moment, given inadequate Trump administration budgets. Like, the budgets for this place, I mean, they got 5,500, 6,500, 7,500 people working there. Cleaning it up, 7,500 people. And it will be for another 100 or 325 years or something. And they steal the money, right? The big companies are there, and they're notorious for stealing 90% of the money through administration. When it comes to the government's transparency, which there is none, and the Hanford nuclear site, there's even less. The stakes couldn't be higher for people who rely on the Columbia River. The public should not be kept in the dark about potential plans to redevelop an area where the U.S. government legally binding mission is cleanup. Ah, yes, life in the red zone, Fukushima. Another one of those snuff stories from the scumbag media. Nowhere is this future more evident than in Fukushima, where the Japanese government is pushing people to resettle in towns, because they originally come across as almost reasonable, almost human-like, almost like me or you that breathes here and drinks water. But we know that that's simply a cover. Where the Japanese government is pushing people to settle in towns that are supposedly decontaminated. You can't decontaminate a town with radioactive fallout. How are you going to do that? These attempts have largely failed. Not largely, they failed. You can't decontaminate anything. You're supposed to just scoop up all the sidewalks, the streets, the telephone poles, the fences, all the buildings, and find a repository and store them for infinity. But what has not failed are the grassroots efforts of reviving Fukushima. No, that's not failed. That's an agenda. They spent $28 billion picking up 30 million one-ton bags, but that was only 3% of the land. It was symbiotic. It was just meant to lull you into complacency, and it worked really well. This is propelled by the ingenuity of local farmers and entrepreneurs, citizen scientists, artists, immigrants from around the world who are intrigued by starting a new life in a nuclear wasteland. Red zone. Nuclear wasteland. So they're calling a nuclear wasteland now the red zone. People are intrigued to go back into a nuclear wasteland. That's the definition of stupid. That means you're an idiot. Think of Fukushima as the Japanese equivalent of American Wild West. No, it's a nuclear wasteland, shit for brains. Before they began flushing radioactive effluents into the Pacific Ocean, well, really, as if Fukushima didn't happen, eh? Just another day of scumbaggery from the nuclear industry. Nothing new around here. So before they start flushing it in 2023, this was on day 23 after the tsunami. 23 days later, the whole planet was buried in nuclear fallout at 1 million to 10 million atoms pre-Fukushima levels of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air, according to the French government. And that's an actual study. That's not a projection. That's not a conjecture or opinion. That's a study. That's a factual documentation. So to sugarcoat it and pretend that nothing happened until 2023, which is what that assertion is alleging, is beyond dishonest. It's more, people that are there, their families should sue the author of this story for attempted murder. Tokyo Electric Power Company, which was nationalized by the federal government right away, which owns the reactors, which is actually, TEPCO doesn't own it. It's just, TEPCO's just on the stock exchange. They don't own nothing. Everything is owned by the investors. Opened the plant to tours by a group called Real Fukushima, which aims to highlight positive development in a nuclear wasteland / area. Positive development in a nuclear wasteland. Like, what are you talking about? It means you're a moron too, whoever you might be that's doing that. On the day of his tour, or her tour, whoever the hell it is, 12 people gathered in a building near the Odaka train station for introductory briefing. We're not going to be breaking into abandoned Pacino parlors and wandering through empty houses that still litter the coast, which is what they actually end up doing. Despite the elevated readings on our dosimeters, you're in a nuclear wasteland. Dosimeters are garbage in that environment. They only measure gamma at best. We will be taking calculated risk for limited periods of time. Calculated risk. You're breathing it in. It's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Includes 10 minutes allotted for standing on the viewing platforms built overlooking the Fukushima ruined reactors. And we've seen lots of pictures of prime ministers stood looking out over those reactors. I'll just find a quick picture, maybe. Nothing's impossible. I know I got a pile of it there, but do I got it right there? Oh, it's in that. Let me just... Okay. Hey, you might get lucky. It could happen. I know I got lots of those pictures because we've covered it a lot. Wrong direction. Just give me one more try. Don't give up on me yet. I could do it. There it is. Wow. What's the odds? Here we go. We got whoever, that's Prime Minister Sugar. We got the man who stopped the bullet with his chest. Never lived to tell the tale. The scumbags of scumbags. Shinzo Arsehole. So that's the platform they're talking about, overlooking the complex. Of course, that's a green screen, that shot. The background doesn't match up. That's clearly green screen, same as this one. In fact, there was some bizarre stuff when you zoom in on, was it that guy or this guy? Hang on. Yeah, you couldn't see the stacks because there's another stack right here. And there's see-through. Wonder what he used him. I wonder. Just one more picture. See, there's a guy behind him. See the hand? But there's nowhere to stand. They're at the fence. That's such an interesting one. See this guy, he's holding up an umbrella for Prime Minister Sugar, who has his own umbrella. This guy is on the other side of that fence for that to work. Because when you look at the pictures, he's right up against the fence. And then when you look at the fence, I'll call it a fence, right? But a barrier. The background doesn't match up. When isn't that because I've shot 250,000 pictures on research expeditions. I know a few things, and I've been doing green screen for well over 10, 12 years, hardcore. When it's that clean of a picture, right, behind them, then the background should be reasonable or blurred out. If it's not blurred out, then it should be reasonable. It's neither. Same thing with this scumbag right here. Well, we don't have to worry about him no more. He got what was coming. There is some justice sometimes. Racing through the rest of our tour, we visit the big new museum, which is a $50 million museum. In a nuclear wasteland, right? In Nami. And so then they count the people that go there as visitors. They don't say they went to the museum. They say visitors to Fukushima. But the idea, it's all propaganda. They wouldn't take the boxes of records for the people that worked there in the first couple of years. They said they never had no room, even though they got 160,000 pieces stored there. And atomic meltdowns. Like what happened at Fukushima, you can't just call that an atomic meltdown and just leave it at that. It deserves way more prominence than that. You're talking about something that has initiated an extinction event worldwide. And I showed you the documentation earlier. You can go look at it from the die-off in my playlist. Just go watch some of those videos. Get your eyes open. The whole industry is insane. There's no direction you look at this industry that you don't come out wondering when does reality come along and sort out the madness. Like this is reactor 3, well it was. The fuel pools, which there's around 8 reactor cores in, and the reactor core, which was running at the time, that's 9 reactor cores. These are pure uranium, pure plutonium. Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. It was a small reactor. These are massive. And so pure uranium, pure plutonium. This was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. This is just absurdly crazy. So you're talking about non-reactor cores, but each one is equal to around 100 Chernobyls because they're pure uranium, pure plutonium. You had 9 lost in each of the buildings. I don't know. Who cares? We drive through, well, you should, because that's why your loved ones are all sick or dying or died prematurely. We were driving through Fukushima, staring at the vine-covered houses in the abandoned town. Fukushima is joined onto the nuclear site, same as Akuma. The other occupant in what was once a town of 7,000 people is a retired bicycle racer in poor health. Really, someone who lives there is in poor health. Gee, that's hard to appreciate. That's hard to imagine. Living right alongside of multiple nuclear reactors that melted down, and they're in poor health. Just never dreamt something like that could happen in my life. Life was good here, he said, but now I walk around, the streets are empty, there's nowhere to shop, nothing to do. And when I take my boat out and go fishing, the catch is no good. Thank goodness. You should thank God every day the fishing catching is no good out there. Retired bicycle racer in poor health. And he's out on his boat catching fish. That's the definition of fucking stupid. And so that's the guy they're going to interview. And we're getting are puffer fish instead of flounders. You don't recognize the officials who are running the town? I don't like the government at the moment, he says. They lie about the radiation. They tell us it's safe to walk where the land has been decontaminated. But if you wander a few feet to the left or right, or cross the street, the levels shoot up and you realize the place isn't safe at all. Bless his heart. And why is he still there? Shame on humanity for leaving him there. Shame on us. The reopening of Fukushima, which is a nuclear wasteland abandoned for 14 years, and Fukushima's other heavily radiated towns is something of a PR stunt. No, it's murder to move people back into a nuclear wasteland. That's murder. The town is reopened with 15% of the land has been decontaminated. It's so absurd. You can't cross the street. You can't stop the car. You can go to your house. Like 15% of it. It's just absurd. It's like you got an acre of land, and 15% of the land is where your house is too. But everything else, somebody comes by every day and pours gasoline on it. Every day. And so the smell is just brutal. Your eyes hurt, your face gets red, and you can't open the windows or the doors and everything else. This is radioactive fallout. And the numbers far, far away on the other side of the ocean are catastrophic. 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall of just the iodine-129. Imagine how bad it is. A couple of months. You can see the nuclear meltdown probably from his bedroom window. And that's the guy they're interviewing. Even at terms misleading, radioactive particles can be moved from one place to another. Does not decrease the toxicity, and they can easily be swept back into the town with the next rainstorm. Well, the reactors are still melting down. Cesium adheres to the dust and clay, which is why it continues to build up in the Fukushima riverbeds and ponds, which is the prefecture they're talking about. It's heartbreaking that somebody would be tricked into going back there. We drive south to Akuma, which is on the other side, the south side of the site, built next to 4 of the Fukushima 6 reactors. We joined a group at the TEPCO Decommissioning Archive Center, one of the area's new museums, which is in the middle of in Nami, in the middle of a nuclear wasteland we're talking about. The Archive Center is devoted to honoring the Tokyo Electric Power Companies for its skill and bravery in keeping the Fukushima disaster from spilling into chaos. It's just hard to believe somebody just said that, isn't it? There's 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools with a total of 36 reactor cores melted down. This is the remains of reactor 3. They put a cover over it, so it looks pretty good now. But the building is gone. It's supposed to be 190 foot, 65 meters, 19 stories. And like when I try to cover these stories, what we try to do is cover as many lies as we can stomach on a story. But you can't keep up with it. You can't cover all the lies, particularly in stories like this. You can't cover every single lie. It'll drive you nuts. That's why I'm like I am, right? Because we do this at least 5 days a week when possible. Can't keep up with it. And there's so many stupid people they can drag in. And that's what they use for evidence, is some moron who's gullible, unfortunately, / stupid enough to go back. Well, what's your opinion? Okay, we'll print that. We don't need academics or scientists. We don't need studies. Let's ask somebody who's a fucking idiot and lives in a nuclear wasteland what they think. We are asked to empty our pockets and leave all of our cell phones and cameras and watches before they can go on the Fukushima site. No cameras. We heard that story so many times, eh? And if they do, they got to give the memory cards to TEPCO and they'll mail it to you later. Deprived of cooling water during a station blackout. And they put F1 instead of Fukushima reactors. They put F1s there. Look, I've never seen that before. The F1 reactors began melting down and the power plants began exploding one after another. These are nuclear meltdowns, for goodness sakes. This was interesting. To reduce the groundwater seeping into the melted reactors, they tried a number of routines we usually covered. Fukushima 1, which is F1, had been paved with asphalt and loaded with sump pumps, drains, ditches, and a mile-long ice wall meant to freeze the ground around the reactors and stop the river of water that flows through the plant, costing more than $300 million in public funds. The ice wall is another TEPCO failure. Well, they had 260,000 people work on it. That works out to $1,153 each, if they don't build an ice wall or anything else. If all they do is give the 260,000 people $1,153, you ran out of money. The official story is 260,000 people worked on the wall. It's absurd to even suggest it for a second. You're at 4 reactors, 8 fuel pools, and a total of 36 reactor cores, massive ones melted down. One of them was plutonium mixed oxide reactor core, for goodness sakes. Water still flows down the mountains, enters the reactors, either seeps into the sea with a load of cesium. Really, what about the uranium, plutonium? The biggest byproduct, by the way, is the curium isotopes. They need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium does. Or it gets pumped into the more than 1,000 holding tanks that weren't completed. The so-called filtration help system wasn't completed till early 2015. Like a typical reactor would fill up all the tanks 6 times a day. The tanks were there to lull you into complacency because Chernobyl was 600 miles away from the ocean. Fukushima was right on the ocean. So they needed to make you believe that it wasn't going into the Pacific because they knew it was going to kill it and start a catastrophic extinction event, and that's what happened. We passed the Lead Shield Command Center, 3 advanced liquid processing facilities called ELPS, which supposedly cleaned Fukushima. ELPS you can't filter fuel particulates because you have a chain reaction in the filter. First off, you're going to have it in the tank, like what happened in Moyak and Hanford. Like, it's not going to work. Right? Because you got pumps randomly dug you got wells dug all around the site. You're pumping that water up, which is multiple sieverts per liter. Of just beta. They only acknowledge beta, multiple sieverts. You just can't have beta. So you're going to have a chain reaction wherever you try to put this stuff. Because all that sediment is going to land on the bottom. You got gammas, neutrons, betas, and alphas. That's a chain reaction. And anybody with basic science knows that. You can't put it in a filter because the filter is going to be thousands of sieverts. The tanks are going to be 1.4 million sieverts of just beta. Not counting alphas and neutrons or gammas, and you got to count them, by the way. Can't pretend they don't exist. They really do exist. The idea of that, the tanks, which were all built in 2013, was to trick people into becoming complacent, and it worked. You can't even walk over the hoses to carry that water from the wells because that would be a lethal dose just walking past it, let alone over it. Just walking alongside it will kill you in short order, melt your organs. It's not an opinion, by the way. This is a fact. Mounted in front of the bus is a radiation dosimeter with flashing red diodes. The numbers keep rising as the gamma radiation. What about the betas and neutrons and the alphas? And I'm more worried about neutrons than I am gammas. Measured in microsieverts. Why would you measure it in microsieverts at a nuclear meltdown? Climbs from 1.0 to 10 and up there from 100, which is 1/10 of a millisievert. There's 1,000 millisieverts in a sievert. There's zero possibility it's going to be that little number. Of just even when you're only looking at gamma. It's completely dishonest. And this is not how you check for radiation, my goodness. Again, you're only looking for gamma. Our tour guide asked anyone having second thoughts about getting off the bus, but all of us did. I doubt if any of them actually went there. You have 10 minutes to gaze at the nuclear meltdowns. Good for you. Just because you're stupid don't mean everybody else is. Japan's fleet of 54 atomic reactors, the plutonium separation program, produced an enormous stockpile of plutonium, 45 tons of plutonium, enough to make 6,000 atomic bombs. Well, 45 tons is 99,000 pounds. That's 16 pounds per bomb. So you're talking about 40 kiloton bombs or something. All the ground around me is covered in brown asphalt and no workers are in sight. What they had done, because they originally came in, the buildings had ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools all over the site. Right, the original footage. And so there was 8 reactor cores at the top of each of the buildings. These were ejected right out of the buildings. All over the site. And so they went in with remote controlled bulldozers and buried a lot of the fuel. And then they poured cement over that. Then they put steel, 16 feet by 8 foot steel plates with cranes. And then they put cement on top of that. And then they put more asphalt on top of that because the workers were dropping dead. Excuse me. Well, that's what they looked like in 2011. Here's what they looked like in 2013. Just stumps, right? Which meant everything was gone. Not maybe, not perhaps. Everything was at the top of the building, so everything is gone. Officially, the International Atomic Energy Agency, all the radiation experts, all refused to acknowledge the fuel pools are gone, which is 16 reactor cores just in those 2 buildings. More terrifying is reactor number 1. How is number 1 more terrifying than Medusa, reactor 3, the plutonium mixed oxide reactor, or reactor 4? Right, so look over here, but don't look over there. And reactor 1 is definitely terrifying, don't get me wrong. That they lost their fuel pool, well, it was an excursion event. It just lost the entire inventories. A tangle of steel beams exploded skyward and landed what looked like a giant game of pickup sticks. It looks like a giant game of pickup sticks. It's impossible to like a journalist. It's just... they're so evil, it's just natural though for them, right? So they say, what lies underneath the tangle of exploded beams is a reactor spent fuel pool. But of course it's not the spent fuel pool. The building ejected the reactor cores into the environment. The top of the buildings are like sheet metal, so there's nothing to make the big plume. Right? The only thing that can make a plume that big, because that's massive, would have been the fuel in the pool. And they just keep launching. And Unit 2 has a new staging room built, and they're going to unload the reactor's melted fuel. It's simply not true. All reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 are complete loss of inventories. Not just from the reactor cores, but the fuel pools too. It's a complete loss. There's 2 fuel pools. There was at the top of each of the buildings. They're gone. That's not an opinion. We have unassailable documentation on it. Although it remained intact, Unit 2 is the most lethal. So they're saying Unit 1 remained intact. It's the furthest thing from the truth. But that's what I mean. Like you start off the story, you're like, hey, this scary story, man. Wow. But then they slowly start feeding you this propaganda as you get further and further into the story. So the idea is lull you in, make you complacent, because you don't know any better. Like Unit 1 had a spent fuel pool on its 5th floor covered with nothing more than a sheet metal roof. So how could a sheet metal roof make that much of a mess? Remember, that building there was 190 feet tall. It's a 19-story buildings, reactors. How could you make a plume that big with sheet metal? There was only one thing there could make the plume, and it ain't sheet metal. Unit 3 is distinguished by the vault built on the top of the buildings. They're just disgusting. The whole industry it's impossible to like the industry. This is the cover story, right? The new official cover story, what we're reading right there. So reactor 3, the fuel pools are at the top of the building, same as reactor 1 and 2 and 4. Right, the fuel pools in 2 top buildings and the reactor cores at the top of the buildings. There is no top to reactor 3. That was right after the explosion. But if you don't know all of these little nuances, these little tales, these minutiae, then you get lulled into complacency, right? You get lulled into the fantasy. Hi, Christopher. How are you, my friend? Thank you, by the way. You've been around a long time. Very long time, actually. Definitely over a decade, eh, Chris? Hi, Marco. Colette, Dana, Bayer. Hello, everybody. Petrov. Conrad, David. Alright. You can't keep up with all the lies. Unit 3, the vault doesn't matter. They built it on a stump to trick you, make you complacent, right? The same is true for Unit 4. Unit 4 is gone also. So whoever wrote that article should lose their degree and should spend 20 or 30 years in jail for doing what they done. It's not illegal to be a piece of shit, though, unfortunately. Unit 4 is empty of fuel. It was empty of fuel on day 5. It ejected everything right out of the building, same as Reactor 3. Unit 2 went China syndrome down to the earth a few days later. Unit 1 detonated. It was the first one to detonate on the 12th. You see that brand right there? That's what they put on radioactive animals, is that particular brand. I don't understand what the hell it's supposed to mean, but that's the brand they put on radioactive animals. The brand put on radioactive livestock in Fukushima Prefecture is that brand right there. I'm not going to try to challenge the rest of it. It's just, you can't keep up with all the lies. I got good intentions to try to cover as many as I could tonight. You just can't keep up with it all. Right, it's going to take me another half an hour to go through all of this. And we're already up to almost 2 hours. And now Asby Brown, that should be on death row in Japan as we're talking, with Safecast. They're just deplorable subhuman species. They're disgusting. They're disgusting people. They're despicable creeps. Each one of us is given the opportunity to hold a vial of TEPCO's treated water and smell it for the camera.
עזה לא תחזור להיות מה שהייתה, וחמאס לא יהיה. חסל את הכל. ייקח זמן, זה ייקח יום, זה לא ייקח שבוע. ייקח שבועות ואולי חודשים. אנחנו נגיע לכל המקומות. לא יהיה מצב שאת האחים שלנו, את הילדים שלנו, את ההורים שלנו ירצחו אותנו. כאילו אנחנו נמצאים במצב שאין מדינה, ואנחנו לא נגיב. אז אנחנו מבינים שחמאס רצה לשנות את המצב. זה ישתנה, עוד 180 מעלות בחזרה, הם הצטערו על הרגע הזה. הצטערו.
Kevin G donated $35 last Thursday. I forgot to mention that, by the way. Just so he knows I got it. Bless your heart, my friend. You've been around a long time, too. Well, there we are. We're back at that spot again. Anyway, James put out a song last night. Bless his heart. He's pretty busy lately. But he's not too busy. He can't put out a song. That's pretty cool. Gotta like that. I put too much pressure on my things, right? Because as if we haven't got enough songs, over 330. I'm always after him. Give us another one. Come on, man. I'm jonesing. Need one more. I need a fix. Hoop. Ooh-la. Should Russia or China drop 30,000-pound bombs on Israel's secret nuclear site? I put that up there for badness, right? I didn't know how people were like, no, Danny, blow more nuclear waste. And I got to agree with all of you. I done it for badness. Not that I complain if they done it, but Plutonium Lullaby. Awesome. It's kind of a country and western sound to it. Bless his heart, though. That's all that matters. He was thinking. We'll catch you on the next one. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Don't forget to give us the likes if you make it this far. If you don't, give me a thumbs up anyway. Just kidding. Take care.
The forms were signed when the subsea zone was stretched to 30. It used to stop at towns 10 miles from the stacks and slurry. But now the boundary's just a line where warnings stall and air gets thin, and every page was stamped to let the fallout in.
They pushed the line from 10 to 30 and called it aid the towns could trust. But none outside the core can vote, and every grant arrives too late. The subsidies replace the power that years of flight and loss erased. But no one votes to host exposure. That choice has been displaced.
Just love the graphics, eh?
The isotopes were half disclosed, the limit lines were overclosed. They took the funds and called it safety, while the plume map spread again. They said the drift was non-persistent, but didn't name the spin. They filed the doses by location, but redacted every rate. They briefed the town on dose decay, but not release by state.
Pill kits came in foil packs with logos from the ministry. They told us store them near the milk and trust the contingency.
Now every zone that takes the payout sits beneath the storage weight. The soil breaks down, the badge reports come quarterly, not late. It isn't aid, it isn't shielding, it's deferral dressed as grace. The strontium moved, the cesium stayed, and none of it's displaced. Let the monitors stay steady, let the drills define the year. They call it stable from a distance, but inside the fuel is near. It wasn't peace, it wasn't cleanup, It was masking Dosa's pride, and every time the scans came back, something new had died.
It's based on a story. Links are under the video. I'll put a link to it before I shut down. I'll put a link there for you in a second here. You got to get it now because the comments won't show up for 12 hours. There we go. There's a link over to that song. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. See you on the next show. Take care, everyone.